Hey you guys, so I thought it would be fun to do a Q&A video to kind of switch it up a little bit from our normal format because I really want to know what you guys want to know. I mean, it's no fun for me to just sit here and talk if it's not the things you actually want to know about. So a little while back I asked you guys on Instagram to ask me any questions you'd like me to cover in this video. So we're just going to do this completely candid. I'm going to answer questions from you guys straight from my phone. And yeah, so let's get into it. Hey guys, I'm Jessie Riemann and I'm a certified eating disorder recovery coach, personal trainer, and manifestation coach. And as you already know, on this channel we talk about overcoming eating disorders and body dysmorphia and how to manifest your dream life using self-love techniques and by building more self-confidence. Basically, I'm here to help you fire that negative inner self-critic and help you unleash your inner confident badass. Just want to take a minute to say thank you guys so much for not only your patience, which is so much appreciated, but all of your kind and well wishes when I opened up and let you guys know what's been going on with my throat lately. Your love and support means the world to me, and it helps me stay motivated as well. You know, I gotta practice what I preach. I may be fully recovered, but we're human, I'm human, and things do still come up. So as I've delved deeper into, as you guys already know about me, I always want to know the root cause of everything, not just treat the symptoms. And what I've really come to realize about the throat is, in terms of like chakras or an energy center, your throat represents speaking your truth and being your most authentic self, and it's your kind of your creative channel, or your channel for creativity. And you know, there's always things that we're going to need to work on in the future. So one of the things that I realized for me is that I've had a tendency with some people to hold back sometimes all of what I really want to say. And it kind of will almost feel like a choked feeling, like I'm literally choking those feelings back. It was causing a lot of tension and pain. And so not only obviously was the tension caused from muscle, which I kind of explained to you guys last time, was just, I've been on the computer so much more than ever in the last year, obviously working with clients. And so that was causing a lot of forward head posture. But I truly believe that long term, because I've had throat issues long before this, not necessarily just this, but like tonsillitis and thyroid problems, and anyway. And so this was the lesson that I was supposed to learn. So I hope it's a little bit helpful to you guys to hear that I still go through things too. And then I have to go back to the drawing board with myself and go, okay, Jessie, like what lessons are you not learning? How can you start learning these lessons and then literally apply a lot of the same things I'm teaching to you guys? I've literally added affirmations into my regular practice. Things like, I am free to be my most authentic self. And I am free to speak my truth, and people love and respect me more when I speak my truth. And it's really helping. So it's getting a whole lot better. Long story short, I'm going to put a timestamp for those of you who maybe don't want to hear this whole story. You can jump right ahead into the questions. So thank you again so much. And let's just go ahead and jump into your questions. Okay, so the first question comes from @ZombieCloud, and this person asks, can we drink teas like ginger, etc., or any oil like oregano oil? So I'm assuming that you are referring to like combat like Candida or maybe SIBO, any type of like bacterial or fungal overgrowth. Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with supplementing herbally. I did do some of that in my recovery. As many of you guys know, I had 13 gut infections before I even started recovery. I found that out from my naturopath literally like a month before. And so I was supplementing a little bit herbally. Now, I had already been doing that probably like 2 years before I even found that naturopath, just because I was studying that stuff a lot on my own. So it's not gonna hurt you, but what I would say is make sure that you're not doing crazy high doses of anything, thinking that like the more the better is gonna kill these things off. Because the whole goal when rebalancing your gut should be to create balance, not to just obliterate everything. Because if you think about the mindset we have when we're coming from disordered eating, we already are kind of these like all or nothing kind of people and we want to be working away from that. So that includes when you're trying to heal from gut problems. So go slow, make sure you're paying attention to how it's making you feel, because recovery, as you all know, takes so much energy in and of itself. So anything that we're adding on top of that that may cause stress, we just want to go slow. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, so I had two similar questions, so I'm going to go ahead and read both of them. That way I can reply to both. So the first one I'm going to read is from @Recovering on Plants. Probably a lot of you guys follow her anyway. Amazing, amazing girl. She asks, when did you start recovery and how long until you considered yourself recovered? And then the similar question came from Indigo, or I don't know, I'm assuming that's how you mean it. I'm so sincerely sorry if I am mispronouncing any of your Instagram handles. How long did it take you to reach your recovery goal? So you can see how those are similar. Okay, so when did I start recovery? Approximately 3 years ago. I found, so basically I was trying to heal my gut, and I have this in a whole lot more detail when I have 3 videos describing the entire process of my story and my recovery, if you would like to have more detail on that. And so I found recovery actually while I was already trying to recover my gut health, as well as like horrible adrenals and thyroid health, and I knew that my metabolism had been damaged, and I just so happened to stumble upon the few recovery videos that existed at that time. So grateful that I did. And then after that, I think it was like this huge epiphany. I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what's wrong. And so I delved really deep into those videos, and like I watched them obsessively. Like I'm always telling you guys to saturate my brain with recovery knowledge. And then how long until I considered myself recovered? This is a really great question. And like I talked about in my last video, you do not need to have lost any weight whatsoever to be considered recovered. And that was absolutely true for me. So I would say that and so fully recovered is in the eye of the beholder, right? So in the video where I explained like what I consider to be fully recovered, which doesn't just mean, you have mostly healed your relationship with food and exercise, but that there's also the mental piece of it, the self-love and self-acceptance piece. I would honestly say probably about 1.5 years, but then I still continued those practices. And because I was in such a practice of I'm being so redundant, of practicing self-love and compassion and working on my confidence and bringing things back into my life that made me feel really good about myself, and therefore was improving on my confidence. And I would constantly count my small wins and just remind myself how far I had come with recovery, and so it's all the things that I'm always preaching to you guys is what I kept doing. And I think that because I had reached that point 1.5 years in, that's about when I started noticing weight coming off of my body. It was very slow, but like I said, I believe that I was fully recovered before that happened. So about 1.5 years. Now in terms of all together, like as far as like the overshoot, sometimes that's what people mean, so I just want to clarify. Let's see, as far as like everything that I had gained in recovery, took me about 2.5 years altogether. So it was a slow process, and as I've said to many of you who are my clients, I believe that well, let me put it to you this way. I had to piece things together. Like, I found the initial part of recovery, but then there was the mental emotional piece that I'm always doing my best to teach you guys. That took me a while to learn all of that information. And so had I had all of that kind of at the front of it, I think that in other words, had all that information right from the get-go, I think that it would have streamlined the process a little bit. I don't know how much though, because it's a big rewiring process and that just takes time. So I hope that answered your guys' questions. Okay, so the next question comes from Marilyn Dockendorf 1. So, hello, Marilyn. And she asks, how can you start to recognize hunger cues after years spent during dieting suppressing it? This is a great question. It really is going to depend on where you are with your recovery, exactly how I would answer this. So it'd be a little easier if I were talking to you personally. If you are still in any way, shape, or form still restricting, and as I've said before, that can also be mental. So please pay attention to that first. Your hunger cues are not going to be quote unquote normal. There has to be zero restriction for a period of time. So in other words, no food rules, no calorie restrictions, no telling yourself that you're only allowed to eat a certain amount of like this box of cookies or, you know, a certain serving size. That stuff has to be gone, and it has to be gone for a while, and that's going to be different for every person's body. But what happens over time is when you have none of those restrictions, like I said, including the mental ones, eventually your body will start to trust that this food, and as much as it's wanting and the kind of things it's wanting, are going to be coming in consistently, and you will start to feel actual hunger pangs again. Now, we've talked about before, mental hunger is also a thing. So if you are constantly thinking about a certain kind of food and you can't get your mind off of it, that's also a form of hunger. So I would always 100% give in to that as well. I'm gonna take a drink of water, so hold on just a second. I'm gonna take care of the throat. Okay, so the next part, what I would say about this is, if you are doing the opposite and you've been following like the mini mod calorie guidelines, like making sure you're eating at least 2,500 calories a day, a lot of times what happens is people will do that in recovery for a while, to the point where, like, at first it's fine and they want all that food, but you reach a point where your body is starting to level out a little, and it is so difficult to choke down over 2,500 calories. Now I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit more in a minute because somebody else asked about this. But what I would say is you want to move more toward eating more intuitively, if that's the case, and you're just choking this food down and you've been eating over 2,500 calories for a few months now. So what I'm trying to say is that can prevent you from also returning to having like normal hunger cues. So I hope that answers your question. Like I said, I would need to know a little bit more detail about what your current situation is in order to make sure that I'm answering this as effectively as possible. Okay, so speaking of that next person who asked about this, our next question comes from Anto Ladi, and the question is, I'm going to paraphrase this: should we be eating 2,500 calories a day or trust in our body and follow hunger cues and eat intuitively? So I think that the mini mod calorie guidelines that instruct us in recovery to make sure that we are eating a minimum of 2,500 calories a day is a great place to start in the very beginning. The stipulation I'm personally going to put on that is I'm not a fan of calorie counting, because to me the whole purpose of recovery is to get away from all of these behaviors that we've already had for so many years. And even though the intention is good, like eating enough to help you recover and making sure that you've got enough to heal your metabolism. The tricky thing is it can turn into a whole new obsession, and I have people who can totally speak on this, where you become so obsessed with making sure that you're eating 2,500 calories that if you start eating even a little bit less than that, people can start to panic and think, oh my God, am I gonna be damaging my metabolism since I'm not eating 2,500 calories? Am I gonna go backward in my recovery? So they just keep being obsessed with calorie counting. So I think that in the beginning, it's a good idea to know approximately what 2,500 calories looks like. And so what I personally did was I wanted to know like a typical day of like, was I eating 2,500 calories a day when I had started recovery and was eating a lot of food? And once I knew that, I was like, okay, as long as I'm listening to my body, I'm naturally gonna eat over this amount as long as I'm giving in to all my cravings. Now, if you're struggling in the beginning to eat enough and you wanna make sure you're hitting that, you can, like I said, get an idea of what that looks like 1 or 2 times, and then you already have kind of a guideline in your head, but don't start obsessively tracking. So I think it's a really good place to start. There will always come a point within recovery for every single one of us where your body, if you've been doing this consistently, you're not going back to diets or restriction, your body is going to start to trust that this food is coming in consistently, and it's going to start to calm down a little bit. Your cravings come down. You can keep food in the house and it no longer feels like it's calling to you, right? And at that point, it can be really difficult to keep forcing yourself to eat 2,500 calories or more depending on the day. Again, I'm heavily emphasizing the fact that like you've been in recovery for a while at this point and your cravings are coming down. Okay. So when you're at this point, it's like I said, it's really difficult to force yourself to eat as much food as sounded good and you were able to in the beginning parts of recovery. So your body will start to tell you that it doesn't want as much food from you anymore. You'll lose interest in food. Sometimes even food, the sound of eating more food that day will make you sick to your stomach. You just can't force, you'd have to be essentially choking it down, which people have done. And the fear is always coming from the same place. People don't want to have to go back to the beginning of recovery and do this all over again. Of course not, right? But at that point, you're not going to. If you start following your hunger cues at that point, right, you're not going to damage your recovery as long as it is not coming from a place of restriction or judgment somehow about your food. So in other words, if your appetite comes down and then you start having feelings of like, oh, well, my appetite's coming down, maybe now I'm gonna be losing weight, so I should be trying to make sure I'm not eating as much. No. Those are eating disorder thought patterns. That's definitely going to get in your way. So it's very important to be aware if that's where your thought process is. But if your body is genuinely telling you, I don't want to eat as much as I did in the beginning, then definitely start listening to that. It's completely normal for your appetite to come down and not feel the need to eat as much as you did in the first few weeks and months of recovery. And keep in mind, this will vary. So it'll go back and forth. And it's totally normal to have some days where you want to eat a lot and some days where you don't want to eat as much. So as long as it's coming from that place where you're just letting your body do its thing, it's always, your appetite's going to come back. I would say the only thing that could get in the way of that is long-term stress. So that's a whole other topic, but if you have had long-term stress and that is stifling your appetite, then obviously it's important to address the stress and your appetite will come back. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, so our next question comes from Luelle Rocks. Love that name. Can I really recover after 30 years of anorexia and bulimia as I'm, okay, we have a visitor. Hi. Sorry guys, you know she always wants to be part of this. Okay, let me say it one more time. Can I really recover after 30 years of anorexia and bulimia as I'm just so brainwashed with the eating disorder? 100% yes. It does not matter how long you have had an eating disorder. It does not matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you are, societally considered overweight or obese. Every single person can recover and absolutely has the right. I think a lot of people consider, or they think, I'm not sick enough, because they assume that you have to be significantly underweight or making yourself throw up all the time to be considered worthy of recovery, which, excuse my French, but it's complete bullshit. Absolutely 100% you can get fully recovered. Just make sure, like I said, that not only are you doing the initial parts of making sure you're healing your relationship with food, you're giving into all your cravings, eating as much as your body tells you to every single day, you are working on your relationship with exercise, but even more importantly than that, working on developing a daily self-love and self-confidence practice. When you can combine those things, over time you will 100% get fully recovered, whether you reach out to a coach or not. It does help. I'm not saying it has to be me whatsoever. Okay, there's plenty of great coaches out there. It does help to have support, but at the very least, make sure that you are doing those things on your own, and absolutely you can recover. So I hope that pumped you up and motivated you. All right, so our next question comes from Food Freedom Lifestyle. And the question is, would you stick to recovery if your set point weight would be in the obese range? Such a good question. Absolutely. Absolutely. Recovery is so incredibly worth it. It is I honestly believe, at least if one of the top 2 best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. And when I was at the peak of my recovery, in other words, at my highest weight, like, I'm a short girl, I'm 5'3", and I was considered obese for my height range, which, by the way, I don't think I've done a video on BMI yet. BMI is also complete BS. You'll hear me say this to the end of my days. The BMI chart that so many of us are going by in terms of what doctors will use to classify as whether or not you are considered obese, even overweight, does not take into account your frame, how much muscle you have on your body. So there is no way to just say an exact weight makes you obese. Now, I'm assuming that part of what you mean is at a weight that makes you feel like what we would consider obese, meaning like you feel very uncomfortable in your own skin. And what I would say to that is a huge reason why we reach, other than the biological reasons, which I've talked about before, like why you put weight on in recovery, that absolutely needs to happen. The emotional reason that this happens to all of us is because deep within, our bodies want us to reach a place where we have self-love and self-acceptance. And I kind of look at it like our bodies make us face our worst fear, which is becoming, what we consider to be overweight or obese, and actually having to face that. So the goal, and I really believe what our body is asking us to learn, is to learn to love and accept ourselves at our heaviest weight, the thing we've been the most afraid of, so that it can feel relaxed enough to release anything that it doesn't feel that it doesn't need anymore. But to, I guess, just point blank period, like blatantly answer your question, 100% I would have chosen it no matter what, because no diet, no low weight is worth feeling crazy around food and your body and hating yourself every single day of your life. Absolutely not. And the amount of freedom that you get from recovery is worth it 100% of the time. So I hope that answered your question. Let's do one more, okay? Oh, we got one more from Miss Marilyn Dockendorf. How to get digestion to work correctly after years of dieting and restriction. So if you don't already know, I have done a couple videos on this that will explain this in a lot more detail than I will have time to today. But ultimately, here's what I'll say. I'll try to condense this. The thing that causes us to have digestive problems from years of dieting is this. When you eat restrictively, you are naturally taking in very little food, or a lot less food than maybe your body would like for you to, right? The other thing is we're taking in fewer types of foods, because most of us, when we go on some type of diet, we start eliminating certain food groups or certain macronutrients altogether, like low carb diets. Anyhow, so when you do that, what you do is in your small and large intestine, we have tons of different kinds of bacteria, and they all need different types of food. So if we, let's say, go on a low carb diet, and we obviously take carbs out, those bacteria that need carbohydrates in order to survive will start to die off. And when you don't have those anymore, then you don't have the ability to be able to digest them. So if you do start trying to add carbohydrates back into your diet, which we do through recovery, you're going to have gas, bloating, all kinds of digestive problems, sometimes constipation or diarrhea. And that is because your body is now going, whoa, we don't have the bacteria for this. So it will start to, the bacteria will start to proliferate again with time. But that's why in the beginning, the digestive issues get so much worse. The other thing is when you're not used to eating as much food, what your body will do, because it always needs to save energy. When it's not taking enough, it's going to see how many processes it can start to shut down in order to keep the main ones functioning as optimally as possible. So your natural stomach acid will start to become depleted. Your natural digestive enzymes will start to become depleted. And your overall, like the speed of your digestion will drastically slow down, because your body is trying to absorb every last calorie and nutrient from your food as possible. Let me grab another drink of water. And so it's going to slow that down. Slow motility means constipation. It also means that food is going to be sitting in your stomach, not only digesting slow, but because it's sitting in there for so long, your body knows that that's not healthy. So it brings in bacteria and fungus in the way of Candida to feed off of the food that is sitting in your stomach, not digesting properly, to prevent sepsis, which would eventually kill you if this didn't happen. So your body's actually trying to help you, but then you have fungus and bacteria in areas where it's not supposed to be, which is then going to cause more symptoms. Also, as your natural stomach acid becomes depleted, like how many of us, if you've ever had heartburn, you go to the doctor and they tell you it's from having too much stomach acid. I'm not a doctor, so I can't legally, well, I'm just gonna, from my own research, and you can look this up on your own, the actual issue is not having enough stomach acid. So let me explain this. So if this is your stomach, right? And this, let's say, is the normal amount of healthy stomach acid that you would have. Over time, when you don't eat enough, or you don't eat enough of certain kinds of foods, especially protein, that stomach acid is going to start becoming depleted, because your body knows I'm not using as much, and this is taking too much energy to create. So that stomach acid starts to come down to here. Now imagine that, let's say I put some protein in here. Here's the acid, and here's the food sitting in there. Well, your body knows that there's not enough acid to actually cover up that food so it can dissolve and then move through the rest of your digestive system. So what happens is your body starts to take this stomach acid and rapidly churn it around in your stomach to cover up this food, and that's going to cause backwash into your esophagus. So with recovery, as your body becomes more balanced over time, I will keep emphasizing that word because this is not a quick fix. you've been, eating different kinds of foods, you're gonna do that naturally by listening to your cravings. Your body's gonna want all the things that you have restricted the longest. Your body will start to turn these systems back on. It's gonna start producing more stomach acid again. It's gonna start producing digestive enzymes again. The bacteria will start to balance out because your body will have the nourishment and the energy to now be able to fight those infections off. That's what happened with me. All 13 of those infections, I had 2 parasites, a whole bunch of bacterial overgrowth, so they call it SIBO and Candida, and all of that by like 8 months into my recovery of doing this very consistently, they were gone because my body had grown strong enough to be able to fight those off. Now in the process, I would recommend, again, I can't prescribe, so I can only recommend to you taking digestive enzymes, HCl, and peppermint oil capsules to help with the symptoms that you might be experiencing as digestion almost feels a little bit worse in the beginning of recovery. But overall, that's why you have digestive issues to begin with and why they get so much worse in the beginning of recovery and how to fix them. So I hope that answered your question. I hope that I hope this was kind of fun. I think I want to do this again. So if you guys have more questions you'd like answered, we will do another Q&A. If you like this video and would like to see more videos like this one, be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you never miss an update. And if you did find this video helpful and enjoyable, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. It really does help us to reach more people who also wish to learn how to have more self-confidence, how to love themselves more, and how to be done with dieting. Bye, guys.